Hello and welcome to Innovation Culture Coding, to the live show again. After almost a week of break, we're back in Innovation Culture Coding Live. And this show is featuring independent coaches and consultants who work with innovation topics. And that's the window to the external world where I want to feature them authentic on how they are, how they work, and how they go about helping people and helping organizations to be successful. My name is Jens Heitland. I'm the CEO and founder of Heitland Innovation, and we're building out a new platform that's called the Innovateur Hub, where I bring innovators together. I connect innovators, and within this, I have as well integrated a lot of shows, different formats where we want to let people shine. So have a look at the heitlandinnovation.com/innovation culture coding website, and you will find as well someone who will join me now on this live stream. So hello, Tammy. Welcome to have you in the live stream.
Hello, thank you for having me, Jens.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
Fantastic. I'm still recovering a little bit from a cold, so my voice is not up to normal, but I'm all good. Nothing to complain.
I'm not complaining.
So we have an exciting topic today. I'm really looking forward to learn from you. Um, and before we go into that, let us a little bit know who you are, what you do for a business, and so on. Just tell us a little bit.
Sure. So, for the past 20 years, I've been working independently as a career and executive coach, and that has involved work with individuals, companies, organizations, doing work both with individuals and groups, teams, working with people who are emerging leaders and established executives, and also helping teams work better. As they say, helping people to play better in the sandbox together. And more recently, in the last few years, I've been a podcast host of my own podcast, Work from the Inside Out. And then most recently, am just about to publish my first book,
Yay.
Work from the Inside Out, which is coming out in November. So, really expanding my content creation and finding my voice as a writer and author.
I'm looking forward to read it. And of course, everyone who is interested in Tammy, you can get to the show page, see a click to her business, to herself, to when the book is out, of course, to the book as well, so that you can find it, and as well the podcast. So everything what we talk about will be available to everyone on that show page, so you can directly find everything in one click, and then get your entrance to Tammy's world. So we always start with a case description inside the Innovation Culture Coding show, and we have decided to go for a very interesting case today. So what we have looked into is a leader who got promoted into an executive role in a company, and this person has just quickly got a seat on the executive table. So very, 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 very early in inside of that new role and inside of the executive table as an executive. So, but that wouldn't be easy enough. We take it a notch up. This person is now responsible for people who have been above from a hierarchy level um, before. So managers who have been leading that person are now employees or people who are reporting to that person. So that's taking everything a notch up. I've been there. I can tell you it's not an easy one. So this person is hiring you and working together with you and finding out how to overcome, how to grow as a person, and so on.
Right.
So how do you go about helping that person?
Good question.
Good. Directly the easiest one.
Right. So, well, first and foremost, I have to get to know the person, of course,
Hmm.
and know what his questions are. What is he feeling most challenged by? What are his perspectives on the situation, and what is he finding most challenging? So, when you're a coach, you have to separate out. And this one's an interesting one, because I've actually also walked in these shoes. So it's, as a coach, you have to separate out your own experience from the experience of the client, because he is a very different person than I am. The time in which I went through that kind of a situation was many, many moons ago compared to what he's living with now. The kinds of pressures that he's dealing with now are very different. The kind of business that he's in, very different. So first and foremost, I have to work on myself and separate out all of that, right? And understanding what he thinks is possible from where he sits, and the expectations that are on him. Also, in terms of helping him both navigate the relationships that have now completely flipped, right? So these are not only people who he used to report to, they are people who are probably age-wise a generation or two ahead of him. So they are people who probably are old enough to be his parents' generation. So there's all of that, baggage. I don't even know, can't even find another way to say it.
That's a melting pot.
It's a real melting pot. And so, there's and just to paint the picture even darker, the culture in this organization has had a level of toxicity in general. It's a privately owned company. The co-leaders of the company, let's say the patriarch of the company, is known to be a very abrasive personality. So he's reporting to this very abrasive person, and then the other co-owner who's actually everyone likes. So there's this dual partnership leading the company that's very complicated. And yet he really wants to succeed. He wants to bring people together and turn it into a love fest. And I think his ideals are wonderful, but as a coach, we've got to really work on, how do you deal with this realistically, get the job done, but also build a culture of collaboration and respect. And he's struggling with this. We've now been going over the results of a 360 assessment that was just done. And so, in his own words, he said, when he first saw his results, he said that was a kick in the pants.
So just to go a little bit deeper, on this 360, did he get feedback from the employees, from the management, from the executive board? Who was filling in the information?
It was his boss. He got feedback from, actually, his boss is not the patriarch. His boss is I'll call her the matriarch, because she's the person who most people find more approachable. He reports to her. He actually probably reports to both of them, but she is technically his boss. And so he heard from her, and then some peers, and then also his direct reports. So I can't remember the exact number of people who responded to the 360, but now he was just promoted a few months ago. So I was curious to know when the 360 was done. It was done after the announcement was made of his promotion. Because it took quite a while to get all the responses in. So yes, it was a true 360 in that he really did get a range of responses. It would have been interesting if he got responses also from, even customers or vendors and people like that. That would have also been an interesting perspective as well. I think he just got internal feedback. Yeah.
But it's at least it's quite interesting. It's at least a step where you get a lot of feedback, and then it's more about most probably you as a coach need to help the person understand
Yeah.
what that means. And as well, I was just thinking like, okay, I mean, this person is fairly new in a role,
Hmm.
and he's now getting a lot of feedback, which is like from people who have not really long term worked with him in that new position.
Right.
So they're just shooting from the hip, literally, because
Hmm.
I mean, they might have an opinion, but after a couple of months, you don't really know how it is to work with a person.
Well, they have an opinion. Let's
Yeah.
just say that. And he wasn't that surprised by
Huh.
the feedback, but he's kind of hurting right now, I think, but
Hmm.
he's also got his pride. So it's kind of a paradox in that there was a time where when he was in his previous role, he was one of the more outspoken people. I mean, he was in a senior management role as it was already. So
Uh,
he was already quite outspoken, was probably considered kind of almost a spokesperson for a lot of people in the organization, and would speak up when he didn't like how certain things were going. So he was known to be kind of I guess, a rabble rouser, so to speak. And so it's interesting that he was elevated to the role that he was in. Maybe they wanted to keep him closer. That's why they elevated him. I don't know, but this is all self-reported to me, of course, and the feedback that he's getting now through the 360 is that people are feeling that they're not getting that he's not creating a positive work environment.
yeah.
Um, and he wants people to find him approachable, and they're not. So uh, there's some work to be done there in terms of how he creates the space to allow people to approach him, to work with him. But he's also finding himself feeling very critical of the kinds of work product that's going out and how people are sending things out to clients. So he's also, I think, a perfectionist, and he's having a hard time stepping away from that perspective. So it's like he wants his cake and to eat it too.
Yeah.
And I think we've got some hard work ahead of us, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I would like to uncover a little bit and open your toolbox. So we have now a fairly good picture of what the situation is. So, and of course, this is now like imagining it a little bit because it's always dependent on what's happening.
Yeah.
But what are the different things you're foreseeing to do with him or doing with someone you have done it already
Mhm.
into that direction to helping that person? I mean, you mentioned like creating a positive work environment, and then as well, most probably getting in tune with himself in
Mhm.
understanding of how do I get energy out of that? And is it just the position or
Mhm.
whatever it is?
Mhm.
So how do you do that, and what are the different tools you're using?
Well, one of the tools that I'm using is, interestingly enough, is something we call powerful questions, which has to do with inquiry, which is part of what we're talking about here today. And that is to try to ask him thought-provoking questions that get him to slow down enough to reflect and think about what he's doing, how he has been doing things, and how he might do things differently in order to reach the people he needs to reach, especially those people he's feeling, let's say, most disconnected from, who he needs to be connected to. And how can he better engage them? Because that's going to be the key
Mm,
to him moving forward. People are feeling disconnected, and he's feeling disconnected. So, how do I get him to arrive at those points and feel like the solutions are his idea?
yeah.
And the best way, in my mind, to do that is to do it through a process of inquiry or questions. So, I use this tool or these group of questions called powerful questions. And they're usually a set of questions that elicit reflective answers. So they're questions that might say, what would it look like if? Or sometimes it's a matter of, if he says something, I might just say, tell me more.
Yeah.
Just ask him to expand on what he has just said. Or I might frame a question to him in a way to say, so it's not always a question. It might sound like a statement, but it really is an inquiry, let's say. So I might ask him, so on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say 10 being the best case scenario, 0 being the worst case scenario, where would you say the situation with regard to this person is right now? And he might give me a number. And then I might say, so what if it was, let's say he says it's a 5. I might say, so what would a 7 look like? And try to get him to step into how is he going to improve, rather than me sort of telling him what I think he ought to do, because that's not coaching. That's consulting, right? So I want him to come up with the answers. Now, it might be that I might make suggestions along the way, or I might tweak his answer and say, well, gee, that sounds great. So it might be that I build on his answer and say, great. So building in accountability to that is also a coaching tool. So I might say, so when will you do that by? Or, I've noticed that a lot of your interactions are on the fly. How about setting up some specific, office hours? Or how about doing something old-fashioned, like inviting someone for coffee or out to lunch? Scheduling specific time where you make it clear to somebody that you really want to engage them, rather than stopping them in the hallway and saying, hey, by the way, I need to talk to you about this. Come to my office. So talking to him about, or asking him about, so tell me more about what you sounded like when you spoke to that person. And having him slow down enough to just notice what his tone is like. Not just what he said, but how he said it. Without explicitly saying to him, so did you notice how you sounded when you spoke to that person? So I have to watch my tone too, because I have a feeling that, with me, he's on his best behavior, but I have a hunch that in the office, he's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way, because I think there's a part of him that can come off sounding maybe a little arrogant, perhaps. But I know what his intentions, that they're good, but I think he's so busy running as fast as he can that he's going to miss the forest through the trees if he keeps going the way he's going.
Yeah. And most probably, at least in my experience for myself, there are like underlying reasons for that, which he might not be aware of at all. So he's behaving in a way that he just trained himself to do it, rather than doing it consciously.
Right. And so we might get there. And and there may be parts of that really need to go to a therapist.
Yeah.
And being that my earlier career was in the mental health field, there are times where I know where to draw the line. I know when I'm hitting a point where this is therapy material and this is coaching.
Yeah.
And yet there are people who complete a coaching session with me and they'll say, wow, that sounded like, I feel like I was just at the therapist. And I always say, don't say that. I don't have that kind of insurance.
No, but I get that.
It's an insight-oriented process. You are going to look at yourself. You are going to figure out, your internal mechanisms. There is a part of that. Yeah.
I was about to say, Anjum, if we are true, come on, how many people, if you look into business, how many people are really reflecting about themselves in a way of thinking, how do other people notice me? How do people think about me? Maybe they do that part, but not really about, am I consciously thinking like you said, I love that. It's like slowing down to think.
Yeah.
How many people are doing that in business? Yeah.
Well, I think that what you just said, I think most people, when they think they're reflecting, they're actually trying to be mind readers,
Hmm.
right? They're they're thinking they're thinking about what they think someone else is thinking of them. So they're actually not reflecting on themselves. They're reflecting on what they think someone else is thinking of them, and they have no idea what someone
Hmm.
else is thinking of them, because the chances are very, very good that that other person is wondering about what everyone else is thinking of them. So everyone is worried about what everyone else is thinking of them. So nobody is thinking about anybody else. I'm being a little glib here, but I think that what that also makes me think about, and this is particularly important, I think, when you're in a top leadership role, because I believe everybody's a leader. Everyone's a leader. However, when you are, let's say, at the top of an organization and you have the bottom line responsibilities, I think a lot of those folks don't pay attention to what their impact is. That when they, let's say something off the top of their head that they haven't really given a lot of thought to, they are not aware of how something like that can vibrate or ripple out into the organization and create a life all its own. And they think they just said something, they even forgot about it, and they have no idea that it's literally become a story.
Hmm.
Right. And I've had conversations with executives, and I've said to them, when you do something like that, or you even sit a certain way in a meeting, or you show up dressed a certain way, or I mean, I've seen this and dealt with it, and they're like, really? They think they don't matter. They think they don't have an impact in that way. They think no one is paying attention.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make them self-conscious or, have to pay attention to every little detail, but I do want them to start to realize the kind of impact they have, because I think they really do need to be tuned in to that. And part of that includes developing their powerful questions, developing their sort of almost another sense of inquiry to understand what is going on with other people around them, to really learn more about those people, and not just to be putting out, not just always be telling people things, but asking.
Yeah. It's it's so interesting that you say that. I have had a mentor, very senior executive, who over 20 years was like on a rising and was a rising star, and then got very, very senior and got into executive positions and so on. This person, incredible person in itself, was staying connected to the different levels this person has been working on. So started really from the bottom and always stayed connected to people from that time, so
Mm.
that he was grounded to where he came from.
Yeah.
And he was kind of mentoring me to, hey, he was literally saying, hey, you're one of the young guns now. Stay true to who you have been, because that will always ground you, and stay connected to the people, because they will tell you into the face that you're shit. They will tell you into the face, hey, that sucks what you're doing.
Yeah.
Nobody else from the executive level or someone who wasn't part of your life would ever do that,
Yeah.
but they will.
Yeah.
So stay close to them. It was such a brilliant mentoring session with him, because like nobody says this kind of things when you're in an executive. Like everyone is pleasing you.
Well, everyone's trying to put on a face.
Yeah.
So how did that work for you? Were you able to do that?
It's always a hard thing.
I think it's hard.
But I inside that organization, I tried to, and I really stayed connected to a lot. Even today, I'm not working there anymore since
Right.
quite a while now.
Right.
But I'm staying connected to people. We still have a WhatsApp group from the dudes I started with,
Oh, cool.
and of course, now it's just more about beer drinking and this kind of things, but
Right.
it's still, I mean, that's 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's super important.
It's hard. I think it's very hard for people when they know that their job is in your hands, that, that their livelihood is in your hands. It's hard for people to be quite that honest. You've really got to create a very clear and solid culture that enables that kind of honesty, right? But I think there's another place for that, and that is if people sense that you're showing up really, really real, really authentic, and I think that word gets overused a lot, so I'm hesitating to say authentic, but I think it's about setting an example. That there's an element of trust there, let's say, that when you walk your talk, if you say you're going to do something, do it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't even agree with it anymore, if you're going to say you're going to do it, either do it or don't do it, but explain to people why you changed your mind. And I think that kind of transparency goes a long, long way. When you're not explaining things to people and people are wondering about what you're up to, what's going on, what's real, what's not real, that's where you lose them.
Yeah. And it's as well, in my experience, it's like being yourself in a way that you're not like two extreme different persons in your, like, you don't have two personalities, at least most of us don't.
Yeah.
But you're playing it often in a corporate environment. If
Yeah.
I'm with this group of people, then I'm like that. If I'm with this group of people, then I'm completely different, and
Yeah.
people will see that.
Oh yeah.
Like if you normally say hello to someone on the floor or wherever you walk, and then you don't because there's the big boss next to you, that's, people will notice that, and that will hurt a long time.
Oh, and that'll spread like wildfire.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's get back into the case. So for everyone who is watching this, we have started off with a leader who got promoted into an executive role, got a new seat on the executive table, and is now having people reporting to him who have been his manager before. So a lot of things going on. And then we looked into how you first, of course, separated yourself from your experience, and then really truly diving into what is that person, what's going on with that person, understanding that. Then you explained the 360 you have been doing, and kind of unfolding, understanding what are the different perspectives. And then you started to explain how you would use powerful questions to help that person going into building a positive work environment, which is one of the topics.
Mm-hmm.
So going from the powerful questions to the next tool, to the next way of helping that person, what are other tactics, other strategies you would be helping to unfold?
Well, I think that going from the 360, we would probably set some goals. So we would choose probably one or two particular aspects of the 360, and then narrow those down to SMART goals. So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, or relevant, time-bound. Everybody has their own ideas of what the R is for. And I'm always surprised when I lead a workshop and I say, does anyone know what SMART goals are? And sometimes there are people in the room who've never heard of them, which always surprises me. But so we'll usually, design some kind of a SMART goal. And then from there, we'll map that out into more of a plan. So we'll talk in specifics about what that's going to look like, what kinds of, who, what, when, how, and why. I think the why is actually key. Like, why are you doing any of this? And that's really that gets in at the deeper level, because if all we do is the what and the how or the who, that skims the surface. That's just the task. So I make sure that in tandem with developing the plan, because everybody's happy to have a plan. They love structure, and it makes them feel like they're, I'm working with my coach on a plan. It's really, they can tell people that, right? But the why, that's where the real work is happening, because the why is what drives everything else. And that's where I can really do the coaching. So that ties back. It almost, in some ways, doesn't really matter what the goal is if we can work from the why. So the why, being what's at the heart of this for you? What kind of a difference are you trying to make? Because, people come and go out of organizations. So you could say that you want to set up a better way to create a positive work environment, but, a year from now, the people that you're interacting with there could be very different. Could be a different group of people. It's already changed since I started working with him. It's only been a few months, because this place is a kind of a hot mess in some ways. And so people are coming and going out of there. He's very committed to staying. So, how do you deal with all those changes? What is anchoring you to stay there? What is it that what does success mean to him? And trying to keep that those are the grounding points, right? Is the why. It's not what he's going to do and by when and with who.
Yeah, and I think to that point is most probably one part is success to him as a person in general, and then success to him in this new executive role.
Yes.
And that might be aligned or connected, but might be different as well on a long-term perspective.
Yeah.
And then most probably understanding what it is will help to get a direction, which, like, where to go.
Yeah.
And where to get the energy from in the same way.
That's right. I love that you brought that up, because he's in a position where he's probably working, like a lot of Americans, 60 to 80 hours a week. Burnout, formula for burnout.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then without a why, it's another half a year, depending how fit and healthy the person right now is.
Yeah. So he's pretty determined, though. But I want to make sure that it's not just about the doing. It's, as a colleague of mine says, we can't just be human beings. We can't just be human doings. We have to be human beings.
I love that. I will use that quote going forward.
All right.
So setting goals, understanding the perspective of SMART goals, understanding the why, working with the why. What are other techniques and tools and tactics you would be doing?
Well, sometimes people have a hard time deciding which direction to go in, especially when you see a 360 in front of you. There are so many. I mean, there's a list a mile long of what direction to go in. So there's another tool that I use sometimes with people. It's called the wheel. And it looks like a pizza pie. 8, you can put 8 wedges in there. And so what I'll have them do is pick, let's say, 8 different areas. And so sometimes I use like more of a visual approach with somebody, because just talking about it kind of in the air is not working. So we'll draw out a wheel and we'll pick, let's say, 8 areas. And then on a scale of 0 to 10, we'll draw a wheel around those areas, and I'll have them, and then we'll see how refined is that wheel as they draw in like on each wedge where the number is. So if the edge is 10 and the center is 0, okay, so it's going to be a bumpy ride somewhere, right? But it's the same thing as I was saying a moment ago about, around inquiry. So if it's a 5, what would a 6 or a 7 look like? But when they see it visually in front of them, it's a very different conversation, or it can be. And so I use sometimes different ways to look at things visually so that they can make decisions that way. Sometimes I also will give somebody reading assignments and have them come back to me later. Some people need more time to process.
Yeah.
And so it's not a matter of using another tool in the context of a coaching session, but I might give them something to think about and come back to me with later and see what their response or reaction is to a piece of research or somebody else's work. So it's a whole variety of things that helps them to unpack what they're dealing with so that they have a variety of resources at their disposal. And my intention is to give people avenues that they can also pursue on their own down the road, so that if they're not working with a coach down the road, they still have something that they can remember and do. I get calls and emails from former clients all the time who will say, I was in a situation and I remembered this piece that we did and I was able to work it through on my own. And I did it this way or that way because of the work that we did together. And I love that. I love that it helps people build their own repertoire.
Yeah, it's literally you teach them like frameworks on how to overcome things, and they will be able to tap into that framework and doing it again on their own.
Yeah.
That's super powerful.
Yeah, although I'm a big believer in not doing everything on your own. Not that it has to be that you work with a coach, but I think that, it's a combination of building your own sort of sense of yourself, right? And having some tools available to you to work things through, but also there's nothing that can replace having a reflection of running something by another person. It doesn't have to be a coach, but there's always something to be gained by having a conversation with another person.
Yeah, I agree. Like we said with the mentor example, who gets the feedback from the people who have been starting with that person inside the company.
Absolutely.
You will never give yourself that feedback.
No, and in fact, I find myself at times when I'm finding myself in a bit of a quandary or feeling stuck, because coaches get stuck.
Yeah.
And I say, wait a minute, I'm a coach. I'm supposed to, what would I tell myself? Oh, I should go find someone to talk to.
Yeah, I think that's something I've seen in the pandemic over the last 2 years, is because we're physically distanced, we're human beings. We are missing the connection to other people. And of course, the digital world is now enabling us to do certain things, but still it's different. And I guess, I don't know, do you coach mainly in a physical setting, or is it digital, or a mix?
It's a complete mix. I mean, obviously in the last year and a half, it's all been digital. Prior to that, if people were in the Boston area, which is where I live, I would meet with people in person. And some people really think that that's better for them. I don't think, personally, I don't think it matters, but if that makes them feel better, fine. I let people even come to my home. I'm not sure I'm going to do that going forward anytime soon, but I also had an office that I could invite people to. So I was able to do that as well. But, I've gotten quite used to this Zoom thing. So I kind of like it.
I mean, the good thing
Not
is
everybody does, but I do.
I mean, the good thing is you can work with me, and we would most probably not that easy, at least, meet in person.
Yeah.
You could coach me, and you're in the US and I'm in Germany easily.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the beauty with being able to do it as well in a digital way.
It's wonderful. And I mean, when I was trained 20 years ago, we didn't have this. So, what I was taught, I was trained to do telephone coaching. We were taught that coaching by phone was just fine. And yet I think because of, people of certain generation, maybe my generation, which is a little older, we're used to using the telephone, but we're also used to doing a lot of things in person. And some people think that that's the only way you can make a real connection. Disagree with that. I think there are even advantages to even talking to someone on the phone, because you connect with people. You have different senses that pick things up in different ways. And I'm used to it. I've done it all. So I just think you do what works for you. I don't have any hard and fast rules about how I meet with people. Right now I do, because of COVID. But I try to meet people where they're at and what makes them happy. When everything was open, of course, there were clients I had who might be in town on business, and I would, of course, go and meet with them in person, just because we had the opportunity to do that. Or if I was in their city, we might meet up just because it's fun to meet people in person. But otherwise, this is really nice and convenient, and it's kind of efficient too.
Yeah. Talk to a German.
Wow, I'm married to one, so
yeah, then you know it. So I'm really interested in so working with an executive, and one thing we haven't touched is this person got a new seat on the executive table, which is a whole nother dynamic. So we have now worked a little bit more on the topic of how do you create a positive work environment, which is most probably a lot with the people reporting to that person.
Right.
But I guess there's as well some work to do with the peers and with the people, or with their managers.
Yeah.
So how do you work with that topic?
Right. Well, we're just starting to get into that. I know that one thing that we're going to be doing is actually having a 3-way meeting with him and his manager. That's required as part of the contract. It's not, I didn't establish the contract. I was brought into this by a larger entity. But so we're going to be doing that. That'll be interesting. And he's still finding his way. What's his place at the table? So I'm not even sure, to be honest with you, what tools I will be using to work with him around that. One thing that is coming to mind just as we're talking, though, is probably I will probably challenge some of his assumptions about what he can or can't do or say now that he has a new relationship with these people, So I think he has more of an idea of what he's supposed to be doing with the people who now report to him. I think that there's probably, in some ways, the people at the leadership table, I think he still thinks his relationship with them hasn't changed as much. So I think he's probably still walking on eggshells or trying to find his way there. So I think it's going to be a matter of challenging some of those assumptions about what that means. And again, not to sound like a broken record, remember records? What does that look like? There is another tool that I use sometimes that comes out of the work of Byron Katie. She has this 4-question protocol where, and I'm not like hugely recommending that you take a deep dive into her work or anything, but I do like her 4-question protocol, which is when somebody makes kind of a blanket statement and they're kind of planting themselves in a belief and they're running their behavior around that belief, you can ask them these 4 questions. So first one is it true? Yes or no? Can you absolutely know that it's true? So that's sort of pushing up against the initial answer. Then the third question is, when you have that thought or that belief, who are you being? What are you thinking? right? So we brainstorm a whole list of things. So you might be thinking, well, I still feel stuck. I'm uncomfortable. I don't know, so that we go into that. And then the next question is, so who would you be or how would you be without that thought? And the notion behind that is that thoughts are just things. So helping someone to see how thoughts just run them and that a thought is just a thing. We call this, and this is really classic cognitive behavioral therapy, quite frankly, but we don't want to call it that because coaches are not therapists. But coaching and cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, have a lot of parallels, but I'm not a licensed therapist, and I don't want to pretend to be one.
What I like about that is, and specifically since we started now on the seat, is you don't know exactly which tool will work. It's literally you are focusing and zooming into the executive and asking questions and figuring out what they need in the moment.
Right.
And you most probably stretch them always a little bit.
Yeah.
Of getting them out of their comfort zone and really unleashing the energy.
Well, and not to make them uncomfortable. So there's a difference between getting somebody out of their comfort zone and making them uncomfortable, right? The other thing that you're pointing to that I love is, and as coaches, we call this the dance. What's the dance we're doing? And this takes years to get comfortable with. I know, like, new coaches, they want to know all the dance steps right from day one. And the fact is, you got to practice. That's what rehearsals are for, right? So, I've been doing this for 20 years. So, and I'm always adding new tools and new steps. But I have, I think, some facility now to know what tools or what steps to try if something's not working or we're not getting to where we need to be. I'll try something else. Or if I sense that somebody is not getting unlocked, because people get kind of stuck and locked, we got to go somewhere else. And I'm also very transparent with my clients. I will tell them the reason why I'm asking you this is sense that you're stuck in this thought, and this thought is not serving you. It's keeping you in a place that's not moving you forward.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm seeing. And I will say, I'm not telling you that I'm seeing something as if this is the all-knowing seeing. It's, I'm seeing this. Feel free to push back at me. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong. I'm here for that conversation too.
Yeah, and the interesting part of that is, if you are an executive, like we said before, people will not do that with you in an open way. If we take the example of, like, getting your seat on the executive table, is like your peers, they don't care about you.
Yeah.
I mean, officially they do, most probably. Maybe some of them really truly do. Yeah. But in the end, they're in that role. They're already established, so they don't need to help you. And it's really about, it's like finding yourself, and then while finding yourself, you will find the right place on the table or at the table.
Well, yes. And that's another tool I teach, is the yes. Right? I think you know that one. I have a feeling you do.
Yeah, I think we have had a couple of same educational topics.
So, one thing that occurs to me as we're talking is that I think part of what he's challenged with here is that he's been so much in an execution role that I'm wondering if the other executives, leaders at the table, are still counting on him for all that execution. And he needs to step kind of above that. And I think he's still very stuck in that place. And so even though in name and in place he's been elevated, I'm not sure that he in function has been. So there's a way in which he needs to physically almost move himself onto the table, almost sitting on top of the table, to say, I'm here to be a more strategic thinking partner, not just you giving me a raise and giving me a new title so that I can have more authority over execution,
Yeah.
you know? So that may be a good conversation for me to have with him, is using that sort of mode of inquiry around higher level strategic goals, because I think he is getting mired in all the execution of things and in the minutia. This has been very helpful for me. Thank you.
It's quite interesting because I've had an experience like that myself. Um, Same mentor. This person was saying to me, so I just got promoted into a new, more strategic role from an execution role. This person was saying, "You have been very good in what you did. You need to forget that. You don't know anything about that anymore from now." And the example was like, I was coming from an engineering background, very technical topics, and then I got responsible to purchase the energy for the total country of that company,
Yep.
which was like 40 something sites. Very, very huge amount, and as well money wise. And he was saying, you are the engineer, forget everything. You're now the person responsible for purchasing. The only thing I measure you, because he was my boss at that time, is the purchasing price. I don't care about the technical solution. They're experts. They need to take care of that. So again, like you said, it's like getting yourself into that uncomfortable zone. Like,
Yeah.
holy crap, how do I take my expertise and of course not really forgetting it, but taking it out of the equation? It was like, hey,
Right.
tell me what to do. I have
Right.
no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like asking you, how uncomfortable are you really willing to be? Or how willing are you to really try on an entirely new suit?
Yeah. Yeah. We got a Facebook user. I have no idea who that is, giving us some thoughts as well. So you're stuck in a place that's not moving you forward. Makes me thinking about how we get stuck in the construct of thinking forward. Requires forward movement. Sometimes to move forward, we need to step out, back, above to move forward.
Hmm.
It's you're triggering people to think. It's
Yeah.
good.
I like that. I like that. And I can see where in that statement, to move forward, sometimes you need to step out or take a reflective stance. It sounds like what this
Yeah.
person is saying. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Great.
bit like you mentioned. It's like not just the coaching dance, it's also the dance with yourself and with your life.
Yes.
Because I mean, yes, we always think, and retrospective, we kind of make ourselves believe that it was always upwards,
Right.
but it's never,
Never.
never ever. If we're truly,
Never, ever.
then it's like, yeah, it sucked. It was. That's why when I was introducing myself in one of the companies I worked, I was introducing myself with a dance, because life is a dance. You go
Absolutely.
backwards, you go forwards, you go sideways, but
You fall
you
down.
need to keep moving.
You trip over your own feet and fall down, or you put on the wrong
Exactly.
dance shoes and they're too small, you know.
And you step
Get
other
used
people
to
on the
it.
toes
Yeah.
while dancing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's that's interesting. And yet for some reason we've grown up thinking that everything kind of happens on this straight line trajectory, like it's just a progressive thing, one thing after the other, and it'll just build on itself. And somehow we've been, and I think, because kind of like how we go through school, right? You start here and then you go here and here and here, and that's how it goes. And we really believe that's true. And I think even the well-intentioned adults in our earlier lives sort of led us to believe that that would be true. And I think they're just trying to do the right thing by us, but it never happens that
Yeah.
way.
Never. It's also, I could speak like at least 2 hours more with you, and
Oh,
deconstructing more. It's really, really nice and
I
learning a lot. I have so
I
many
feel
notes here.
the same way.
So, one of the questions I always ask close to the end is, can you describe your dream client to us? So, what would be a dream client? If you can paint your dream client, what would that person be or that company?
Well, I would say the qualities are probably the very similar in the individual or in the company, and that would be that, first of all, that they have, a positive outlook. That doesn't mean that they don't have negative moments, that they don't allow themselves to make mistakes, because mistakes are part of the process, right? But I think that I think they have to believe in possibility. And I know that sounds very idealistic, but I think that my favorite clients are the ones who open themselves up to exploration and possibility of what might be possible, of curiosity and engagement, not just assuming that something is a certain way and that that's all there is, that they can ask more questions, they can engage other people, learn from others' experiences. There's always another answer out there. And enjoy that process, not just trying to get to the end point. There is no end point. There is an end point, but it's way down the road. Don't worry about that right now. The process really is the journey. It's not, like I say in my book, I say success is not a destination, right? And careers are not linear. So enjoy the process, explore, and be creative about it. Be curious. I think people try too hard to put everything in a box and I understand why people want clarity and definition. There's nothing wrong with that. But even with that, just stay open and positive. I find myself when I'm talking to somebody who says, "Oh, that won't work," or "That won't work," or "This won't work." There's nowhere to go with that.
Yeah.
And I think there's got to be some element of kindness and gentleness, either with yourself or amongst your peers and your coworkers. So those are pretty broad brushstrokes, but I've seen organizations that operate that way for the most part. And I've certainly worked with individuals who operate that way.
Yeah.
And yet with a seriousness of purpose, but also always a little sense of humor at the same time.
Very important. I agree. I agree. So, for everyone who has heard this description, if you would love to reach out to Tammy, go to, let me just click on the banner, go to heitlandinnovation.com/innovation culture coding, and you have a possibility to connect to her straight away through the links. And of course, we're bringing different clips, the audio version of our discussion here right now, the recording of this session. You will find everything there, and you can, of course, connect with Tammy, and if you want, even hire her to support you if you're an executive in a company with the values she just explained. Tammy, having said that, was a pleasure having you on the show and really looking forward to stay connected and in November reading your book.
Oh,
thanks for being with me.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. Thank you.
Thanks. And see you next. I'm just thinking, when is the next live show? Thursday morning Europe time. I think it's 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock. I will be posting it tomorrow. So see you on Thursday, everyone. Thanks, Tammy, and goodbye.